Friends and family, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. This is Wednesday, July 29th, 2020, believe it or not. And in the midst of the COVID-19, I just sort of wanted to touch base with you on how church service is going to go at Richland Baptist Church, Kingdom City, Missouri, on County Road 220. If you have any questions, need to know how to get there, any comments or anything, please leave in the comments below. But just wanted to touch base with you. Sunday school class, or family groups as we're calling it, starting at 9:30. Most every one of them is doing something. Kids may or may not be. You would need to get a hold of your teachers on that to find out if they are holding classes or not. I know some of the young kids had just started doing Sunday school class, and some of them are not doing anything for Sunday school yet. So keep that in mind. But as far as all the youth classes, the adult classes, they are all meeting starting at 9:30, and then from 9:30 to 10:30, and then at 10:40 is when church services start, or worship service starts. Start off with some singing, and then we get some good preaching, and then some more singing, and then some great fellowship, staying at least 6 feet apart. With all this going on, we're doing all this outside. Some of the family groups are inside, but most of everything is going on outside the building. For some reason, if it was to rain, we will move all the services indoors, and we will just spread out. We have the facilities, we have the technology to move out throughout the building and still be able to see what's going on in the main auditorium in case it gets too crowded. So keep that in mind. And so I hope to see you there this Sunday. But today on my devotion, it's going to be faith or works. I mean, which one can save you, faith or works? And that's a good question. I mean, it was sort of an argument even between the apostles. You had Paul, who said that it's not works that saves you, but it's faith, only faith alone. It's a gift of God. There's nothing that you could do to save you. And now we have James that comes along and says, hey, you got to have works, in other words, for your faith to be fulfilled. And so we're going to look at that just a little bit. I'm not going to hit a lot on it today, but I am going to touch on the highlights just a little bit and find out what's going on here. Maybe get you to dig a little bit deeper. I don't want to do the digging for you. If you dig into the Word, you'll learn more that way than as if I do it for you and sort of hit the highlights. So, Ralph, we're going to look at faith. What is faith? Faith. That is Hebrews 11:1 says, faith, a reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what's not seen. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 9 says, you are saved by grace through faith, and this is not from yourself. It is God's gift, not from works, that no one can boast. And so faith is something that is hoped for, but yet we have not seen it yet. We hope to go to heaven one day, but we have not seen heaven. We get up in the morning and we have faith that, I want to say a lot of times, we have faith that the lights will come on. So we walk over and we do something. But it's the faith that the lights are going to come on. It's the faith that nowadays that our phones will come on, that we can get on the internet and we can view programs like this. Faith that when we walk outside, the weather's going to be nice. I like to go do a lot of fishing, and I have faith that the weather's going to be nice, so I can go fishing or to go hunting. The weather is going to be good to go hunting, and so faith just by itself is not enough. And so that brings us to works. We have faith in something so that we can go do something. Correct? All right. So that thing that we're going to go do is now our works. And so this is where this separation came in. Paul said that there was not anything that we could do to be saved. It's by faith alone is what saves us. Well, James is saying that if you really have faith, you're going to go do something. So let's get into this works part of it just a little bit. James 2:17 says, faith, if it does not have works, is dead by itself. So faith without any kind of works is dead. That's what James was saying. So why was he saying such a crazy thing? I mean, Paul was saying you don't have to do anything to be saved, but yet James says that you do. And Paul, sort of in his own language, sort of contradicts himself. And I'll explain that here in just a little bit. In Galatians 5, chapter 5, verse 6 says, it's faith that works through love. And back to where I said that Paul contradicts himself, you know, on the Romans road to salvation. I'll just grab it. There's a couple of things that he says that you have to do. And you know, Jesus Christ had faith, and he showed us how to live out our faith through works. But in Romans chapter 10, verses 9 through 10, it says, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Well, there's some actions here that you had to do in order to be saved. So those actions are works. And so the faith is what started this process, but then it is the works that completed the process. And that's where James is getting along. And so James 22 says, James chapter 2, verse 22 says, you see that faith was active together with his works, and by works, faith was made complete. So without works, faith can't be complete. And so with works alone cannot save you. It's the faith that saves you. But if you really have faith, you will also have works to go along with your faith. And so Abraham, we're going to talk a little bit about Abraham and Rahab. And Abraham, which of course is the father of all of Israel, and God asked him to go sacrifice his son Isaac on the altar. So Abraham, what does he do? He gets Isaac, he grabs a couple servants, he grabs a donkey, he grabs all the wood, all the supplies that he needs, everything except for a sacrifice. And as they walk along, Isaac realizes that, hey, we don't have a lamb to sacrifice to God as an offering. And so Isaac asked Abraham, said, where is the lamb for the sacrifice? And Abraham, with all of his faith, looks at Isaac and said, God will provide. And so they go on. And of course, we don't know what Isaac is thinking at this time. Abraham, of course, builds this altar, puts the wood on the fire, on the altar to burn up the sacrifice, and then he reaches over and grabs his son and ties him up and lays him on the altar. Now, what are we thinking? Abraham getting ready to kill his only son, right? Well, what happened to the 10 Commandments where it says, you shall not kill? I mean, he knows what this is all about. I mean, it's been this way from the beginning when God made this. And all of a sudden, the angel of the Lord stops Abraham from killing his son. And he says, your faith has saved you. And provided, and then God, of course, provided Abraham with a ram for the sacrifice, for the sin offering. And so this faith that Abraham had would never come about without the work of building the altar, building the sacrifice, going through all the works. And so it's the faith Abraham's faith was completed through his works towards God. Now, Rahab was the same way. Now, who is Rahab? Rahab, she was a prostitute that was living in across the Jordan River there in the land that God has promised. And sorry, but the name of the town has slipped me. Jericho, there we go. And we all know about the battle that was fought at Jericho. Joshua, they walked around the town for 7 times before the walls collapsed. Before they ever even did this, though, they sent spies into the land to see what was going on. And Rahab, seeing these spies hiding from their people, they were so corrupt that her people were wanting to kill them and do away with them and actually have relations with them. And so that's another whole subject. But Rahab's faith, she knew what God's people was capable of. She knew what God itself was capable of because she heard the stories of them crossing the wilderness, how they crossed over the Red Sea, went through the Red Sea on dry ground. Now, how do you go through the middle of the sea on dry ground? I mean, it takes a lot of faith. They had faith that, yeah, God was going to save them, but yet it was their walk through the sea on dry ground that really saved them. It was that work that took care of that. But Rahab knew these stories. She knew that God fed them. You know, this has been 40 years. She's heard 40 years worth of stories of how God took care of the nation Israel. And here they are at her doorstep. And she had faith that God would take care of her if she would take care of God's people. And so that's what she did. She took care of God's people. She hid them and snuck them out of the city so that her city could be destroyed, so that now that she could live with God. And that faith, the faith that she had is what saved her. It's what saved her family. It's what saved the nation of Israel. And so, remember, faith without works is dead. And so if we have, just because we say we have faith, if we don't have anything to back up that saying, it's dead. It's just words. It's emptiness. There's nothing there. So it's the faith, it's our works through faith is what saves us. If you have any questions to that, comment below. I appreciate you hanging around with me to the end of this story. And I know I rattle sometimes, but that's the way God created me, and hopefully you got something out of that. And it's the work of my faith, hopefully, is what saves, or not my faith, it's the work of Jesus Christ, what he did, is what will save us through our faith. And our faith works through our faith is what will show others that we really, truly believe that Jesus died for us. Remember that. Thank you very much.